Good evening. I'm Loretta Benjamin with Choice Farm Market, and we're here this evening with Dave Burgdorf from Burgdorf Winery.
That's correct. Well, thanks for having me over this evening, and we're looking forward to sharing our wines and with the guests. And let's get started.
All right. Well, first of all, I wanted to touch on why we do carry the Burgdorf wines. And as a lot of our customers know, we here at the market try to focus on things that are grown, raised, and produced locally as much as we can. You'll find that 90 to 95% of what we do have in the store has been grown, raised, or processed in the state of Michigan. Burgdorf Winery was a perfect fit for us. They're 15 miles from our door to their door. And one of the things that we really like, in addition to their exceptional wines, is that their wines are truly Michigan wines. And I'm going to let Dave explain that.
Well, Loretta, Truly Michigan wines are, as we've trademarked True Michigan and Truly Michigan, all the wines and all the fruit comes from Michigan. We are not large enough to grow our own fruit, and we grow some of ours, but we are not large enough. So we only use fruit from Michigan farmers that we have selected to grow our fruit at our specifications. And so then we bring it in a definition of a winery by Webster's Dictionary is what I use, but it's a facility that makes wine. So what we do, we bring it in, and farmer and us, we agree that it's time to harvest because all the pH, acidities, and et cetera is perfect in the fruit. So they'll pick it for us, and I get it in the afternoon or evening, and then I bring it home, and the next morning we're processing it at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So it's truly Michigan wine, and my wife makes it all. We do everything at our winery.
Nice. Tell us a little bit about how you got started.
We started making wines many years ago, 40-some years ago, when my wife and I first were married. I grew up on a small farm in west central Illinois. There's a big creek over that way. You might have heard of the Mississippi River. I grew up by that, but we were poorer farmers, or not. We used to grew everything that we ate, but we always picked wild black raspberries. Mm-hmm. And one year I was picking so many; they were just so plentiful. And my wife, I was picking them. My wife said, "Stop making them. We can only eat so many jellies and cobblers and pies." And I said, "Well, I'll just make wine." I'd never made wine, but I did, and it was really bad. But it made my cheeks really red and my toes numb. I had alcohol, and that was my age, So anyway, we started making wine, and then my wife became a microbiologist. She is a microbiologist and did fermentation and research and industry. So we took our hobby of winemaking, and in 2005 we opened our doors as a business, 18 years ago. So
Nice. Well, I know one of the reasons we invited you here today is a couple weeks ago, myself and a couple of my employees stopped in over there. We just wanted to kind of pick your brain and have you teach us how to help our customers have a good experience with wine tasting when we do those type of events. And I just found it very enlightening and actually learned a lot. I'm kind of new to wine myself, just started a few years ago. And I tend to just stay with like the dry whites, and people will come in and they want to know what to pair with fish or what to pair with beef. And for me, it doesn't matter if I'm having salmon or a steak or sloppy joes or Cheerios. It's dry white wine for me. And it's hard for me to even try, but I do enjoy trying them. But I want to help our customers also kind of be able to sample, and I thought it was really unique the way you showed us how to actually taste wine.
Wine is it's sort of a mystique to people, sort of a scared to go about wine, and they've created this, and I kind of go the other direction. I just kind of want you to enjoy wine for what it has to offer you. Don't ever judge a wine by a previous wine. Don't ever want to go and have a wine be like another wine that you really enjoy. You should just enjoy that wine and go buy it. But if you learn to taste wines and learn to interact with it, it's all about moments. I consider it all about moments in wine, and the moments in wine lead up to your appreciation of what this wine has to offer you to whatever you're doing. So we can do that, and that's what we're going to do today. But you always want to start out with if you're tasting wines, depending on your flight, if you go to certain wineries or whatever, but you always do white wines before red wines and grapes, and dry wines before fruity or sweet wines. If you do the sweet wines, the whites and the dry ones are really going to not taste well. But if you go through that keep that always in mind, and then one thing you want to try to do is not to compare one wine to another. I have people come in, and I used to do it myself. I would say that, well, I like this wine better than that wine, but I mean, this was a sweet wine and this is a dry wine. I'm comparing pumpkins and onions, it's not the same. Now, had you had two same dry reds, the same grape, just made by different vintners, you could say you preferred one more than the other one, type of thing.
And that was one thing we did.
Yeah.
Was a takeaway for me.
Correct.
Yeah. And I know you also said, some of the things that will vary, like one Chardonnay from another, would be like soil types in different regions or whatever. I mean, tell us a little bit about.
Well, yeah, there's words like terroir, that's over in France or Europe, it's your region that you grow. The grapes are grown in. The soil types, whether it's highly lime kind of soils or dark soils, not so well, but well-drained soils do well. And then your climate, where you're at, that also enters into the fruit, how the fruit matures. In Michigan, we have a situation here. We have more damp climates. We have a lot of powdery mildew, downy mildew, dry rot, and all these kind of things, black rot rather, that happen. But in other parts of the world and where the grapes are grown, they don't have to contend with those so much, but similar things. They have their own issues. So that enters into it. But the winemaker, he or she is really the key to the winemaking. When you make wine, and by Webster's Dictionary, it's a facility that makes wine. That's what a winery is. And a farmer is a separate. That's a vineyard or orchards or things of that nature. Both are very expensive to do and takes a lot of time to do those. So when you put the fruit in, the winemaker, she or he creates that wine. Their personal style is reflected in the wines, and they are reflective of the fruit. But fruits change from year to year depending on how many heat units one gets from the sun fixing the sugars into the grape, let's say, or into other fruits. So it all should change. Each year, really, the wines will have a little bit of different characteristics to them because of how much maturity the fruit is and things of that nature. If they're always the same, I kind of say, well, those are factory wines. They're always making them the same. But we want our wines to be different than most wines, so we just use what we get from the fruit. And the grapes always give a tendency, they always represent the characteristics of the fruit that we make it from. So we want that to be reflective in all of our wines. So we do it that way.
Okay. And it seems to me when we took a trip up to Leelanau, and I remember there's this thing, the hunt for the reds. Mm-hmm. Does Michigan grow a lot more of the white grape varieties than the red grape varieties, or why was it that it seemed like the white wines were more predominant than? I
would say this to you. In years past, when I wasn't in Michigan, but the climate here was cooler, much cooler. White grapes grow better in cooler climates than red grapes. And years ago, our climate was really cooler than it is today, because of whatever situation it is. But we brought in fruit red wine grapes from France, and it was Chambourcin and Chancellor, and those grapes did very well in cooler climates. But what's occurred recently in the last 20 or 30 years or so, Cornell, New York, and the University of Minnesota have developed grapes which are called hybrids. I call them adapted varietals. So they collected plants and then they tested these vineyards, tested these plants to select for good quality fruit. It bloomed at certain times and it harvested and it made great wines. So all of this entered into what I call adapted varietals. And so now we have these grapes that are here in Michigan and being distributed throughout the United States in cooler climates, even in mountainous areas where it's cooler, higher up in elevation. They're actually taking some of our fruit here from Minnesota and planting them in Oregon, et cetera, that way. But they will survive in the cool climates and they won't freeze out, as say a Syrah or something like that, as a vinifera grapes.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess I'm ready to taste some wine.
I am too. Well, the first wine we're going to do, remember we said we're going to do a white first, and it's going to be a dry white. The one we are sharing here, of course, is a Burgdorf wine. This is a Chardonnay Reserve. This is a Chardonnay grape. It's not heavily oaked, but it is oaked. It's medium toasted French oak. So that's the first one we're going to do today. With this grape, we also make an oak Chardonnay, which actually is just the Chardonnay grape without any barrel or wood introductions to it. And you actually taste the Chardonnay grape. You can also, had we had done that one first, when you taste this wine, you would actually taste the grape in this as well, but it still has the influence of the Chardonnay grape in it. So one thing you want to do is always hold your glass like this, and then you want to swirl your wine, so you want to oxygenate them. And that's what you're doing when you're swirling. That's what the purpose is, to get it oxidized so it volatilizes. So then you're getting ready to see if it's going to be, to breathe it in, to inhale it. And I always like to share, I said, I never sniff a wine. I like to inhale wines, and inhale them very, 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 very slow. And you feel your lungs clear full, because it changes. And it's all about, I mentioned maybe earlier, if not, but it's all about a moment in wine. So your first moment is looking at the wine in a glass's sight. And I usually say, well, what I usually say is, if there's not a dead mouse in it, it's good to go. But that's not what it should be. But anyway, but you can look for legs, and you can look and see if there's any sediment or something that would be in the wine. But this is pretty clear, pretty well filtered, and pretty nicely made. So now you swirl it so it's ready to inhale. So you want to always stick your nose way into the glass and put it there and breathe it in as slow as you can. And you get some of the aroma from that. Now, one thing I teach people, you want to do that about 3 or 4 times, and then your nerve endings in your nasal passages kind of kind of becomes numb to it, and so you don't get any aroma any longer. So then you're being ready to taste. But one thing I've taught myself is, like, if you really want to enhance the moment, is to close your eyes and inhale it very, very slow. And once you close your eyes, you shut off all these other receptors going in, and it just focuses everything here in your nasal passages. It's kind of a neat thing. So try that and see if you get a little bit of a difference. Pick up that little bit of a woody kind of a nose to it, a little bit. Okay, now you want to taste the wine, and you want to not take a big gulp. You don't want to do it like shots. You want to take a small sip, and you want to get it all over your mouth. I always teach people to get it in all over your mouth, and you want to oxygenate it in your mouth. A lot of times we used to decant wine, like red wines years ago in a big glass thing, to let them aerate, to get more nose to them. And the same with this, we now sell you these aerators. If you want to do that, I'll sell you those all day long. But you can also do the same thing in your mouth with your lips, and you're oxygenated. And the smaller the bubbles that you can make in your mouth, to me it enhances the flavors. You get more smaller, it's more surface, more bubbling it will go in there, not the big slurp, because then I always coughed and choked on that, So what we want to do is take a small sip and just keep your mouth open and keep it oxygenated. Get it on the side of your tongue. It's okay to talk, but when you do, sometimes it runs out. But this is like that.
Sorry, I got too much in there.
Yeah, you took a little bit.
I did.
But you'll pick up that oak. Oh my God, it's really nice. It's nice barrel oak. It's French oak is what this is. And we got the chilled moments, but as longer you keep it in your mouth, the wine starts to warm to your body temperature. So now we're getting the warm moments, and it changes completely. And when you go to the dentist and they rinse your mouth out and they suck your tongue out there, all that. But that's what you want to do with the wine now. After it's salivated in your mouth, you want to get it all out of your mouth. So let's take another little sip and get it salivated and then taste that way. Okay, now get it all out of your mouth like you're going to go to the dentist. Wait, you swallow it all. Now open your mouth. You feel how dryness is? So it's on the inside of your lips and on your tongue and on your cheeks. But it's but it's very crisp and very, very smooth. Extremely crisp. All of our white wines represent that crisp, clean flavor. And you also taste the Chardonnay grape. And that's important, not to be covered up, for me, for woody. Some people enjoy that, and that's fine. And that really pairs well with different foods, how you have your stuff. Things like this would be good with a steak, actually. I like it with a steak because it has that woodiness to it, a nice barbecued or something on that order. Or Cheerios, like you mentioned earlier. All right. So that's a Chardonnay and a Chardonnay Reserve, and it's lightly French oak toasted.
That's really good. That's actually my favorite.
Yeah, it's one of your favorites? Okay. What we're going to do, we'll just go ahead and now we're going to just do 4 wines today. The next one we're going to be tasting is our Spartan Reserve, Golden Temptation rather. So this is a Vidal Blanc grape. So this is a grape that we make a dry wine out of. A dry wine. We make the Golden Temptation, and we make an ice wine out of this one. This one's Golden Temptation. This one, you may get some different notes, but I'd like to have you. And I don't want to always guide people what they're going to taste. I like them to experience what they're tasting. And then we always have on the side of our bottle a description of the wines here, what you might be experiencing or you potentially could, and also some of the foods or stuff that would be potentially good to have with that wine. But this one's going to be a little bit more sweet. It will, for me, it gives off a little bit of peach, pear, apricot notes. And it's just and it's going to have more mouth, I'm going to say more viscous. It's going to be more thicker than the one we previously tasted, that Chardonnay. So it's going to have a little bit more fruitfulness to it. So let's swirl this one and inhale and do our things with this wine.
You can tell it's sweeter.
You can tell it's fruitful, but you can't tell it's sweet until you taste it.
Okay. Sorry. See how inexperienced I am with this.
But no, it's fine, because a lot of times people will say they smell the fruitiness of it, and in our society, when it's fruitful, it usually is really, really sweet. But sometimes they end up being dry, even though they are fruitful at the beginning. But did you see how much thicker or more viscous it is in the mouthfeel?
Mm-hmm.
And you oxygenate it. Now you can remember you got the chilled moments because it's a chilled wine, but as it warms to your body temperature, now you're changing all the other moments, so it changes. And that's how you end up describing these wines. One thing we do with this wine, because it does give off the peach, pear, apricot notes and apple a little bit, we take and we warm this wine up with a cinnamon stick and a pinch of ground clove, and I add a little bit of sugar to it, and we bring it almost to a boil, and it's like hot apple cider, like a mulled wine. It's beautiful.
Yep,
and this
I
is
have done that with
it's
this.
very, very nice way to have this wine.
Yeah.
Another way to do something, but than just drinking the wine. But it's a very pleasant wine. This wine is also very, very good with if you have a Thai food that's hot, warm, hot Thai food. Any semi-sweet wine, if you take that and you drink a sweeter or fruitier wine, then it cuts that, and you'll be able to enjoy the Thai again, and it cuts it down. It's not a hot thing the whole time. It's really very pleasant that way.
Now I know some of them, and I guess I hadn't noticed on yours.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll see a 0, and then you'll see a 3 or a 5. Actually, I think on the tasting things that we saw the other day, it had
Right.
that. So 0 would be the driest.
As the way we do ours, we do a 0 to 5. 0 on ours is the dry wine, and a 5 would be our most sweetest or fruitiest, and that's the ice wine. Some other people use different scales, but that's something when you go to look at your wines, there's different ways of doing that. We used to have 0 to 10. Well, that's too many numbers. So we did 0 to 5, but you just look at there, and when you're going to wine purchase Michigan wines, then you want to interact with that winery and find out what their things, but you will be able to do it yourself. It gives you a guide of what you may be expecting when you're selecting a wine in that aspect. So that's what you'd want to do with that.
All right.
The next wine we're going to do now, we're going to go to a dry red. This one we call a Spartan Reserve. We have Spartan wines because when we first opened our winery, I was picking wild fruit in the woods, blackberries and gooseberries and all those kind of things. But we didn't know there were farmers in Michigan at the time that grew grapes for wineries. But here, MSU, Michigan State, the ag farm approached us about buying their teaching and research grapes. And I said, well, yeah, we'll buy those. So we bought those, and they weren't grown for like really production to make quality fruit like farmers that we work with now. But anyway, we bought those for several years. We made many different wines, and so it helped us get going. And then now we work with only farmers again in Michigan, because they could be the truly Michigan seal on the bottle that's 100%. It's truthful. Honestly, it has to be 100% grown and produced in Michigan by a single winemaker. But anyway, we buy the fruit from the farmers, and we get it and we bring it in and make it. But this one is done uniquely different. This is a Chamberson grape, and it's one of the grapes that we brought into Michigan, Chamberson and Chancellor, years ago, and they're still out here, and we're going to make beautiful red wines out of them. But this one's still a little bit different. We work with what is it? It was the Red Cedar Distillery in East Lansing. and we work with Diane there and Chris Berglund and my wife. They used to work together at MBI as scientists. But anyway, we get her bourbon barrels, and after they take the bourbon out, and then we put wine in there. So we put the Chamberson in there, and we have Marquette, and I think a couple other ones that we put in new bourbon. And so you pick up that bourbon that's soaked into the staves of the barrels, and it adds a unique flavor to these wines. So this is the Spartan Reserve, and it's aged in bourbon barrels. A nice dry French wine, but it's going to be it's Michigan, of course, but it's really unique. So again, swirling this one, and these are as room temperature. These are usually a little warmer than the chilled wines, the whites or the things. But if you enjoy a white wine room temperature, I say drink it how you prefer the wine, so you don't get stuck. But you can have different experiences or moments in wine by doing different things with the wines. But enjoy it how you prefer it. This is so good. You pick up that bourbon. It's kind of a neat thing. Yeah. I'm not a real hard liquor person, but I love the smell of bourbon. And this, when you suck it all out of your mouth, and oh my gosh, it's really dry, but it's so smooth. In our reds, I never get heartache or heartburn or acid reflux or any headaches from any of our, and a lot of ladies come in, they won't touch a red, but I said, well, try them anyway, and they're just excited that they can now drink red wines. I think it's believed it's like we only get our tannins that come from the skin, the seed, and any stem parts that get in our, and it's the tannin that I believe that's giving more of the headaches and the heartburn to it.
So is tannin, do they use some type of like a synthetic tannin or something in some of the wines, and that's what gives the headache?
I don't know if there's a synthetic tannin or whatever, but some wines, they put it and leave it in the barrels longer. It might get more
Gotcha.
tannin. And then there's some tannin there is powdered tannin that you can add to the wines and give it a little more shelf life or longevity. But we choose not to do that. So our wines, once they're opened, they only last about 20 minutes. And that's because they're so darn good. They just drink them. That's the only reason for that. But you can keep a red wine longer than a white wine. But anytime you open a bottle of wine, you want to have your friends, your relatives over. Or if you don't have friends or relatives, you can go on Craigslist and rent a friend. But you want to drink the wine because it's never going to get any better.
Right.
It'll be lasted. But don't let the oxygen in it. That will destroy it.
I did see you had something that you pumped, you put on the bottle, and were you drawing out?
Right. What we do at the winery, so we can open a bottle because we're not covered up with people every day like you're going to drink the whole thing. So we want to try to save the wine as long as we can. So what we did, we have these little rubber things that go on the top, and we have a pump that pumps the oxygen out. Oxygen is only your friend when you're tasting wine and tasting and interacting with it in your mouth. That's the only time it's your friend, when you're inhaling it. Otherwise, it's your enemy on the wine. So people asked me today, I was at another store today, and they were asking, well, how long, once I open it, how long will it last? I said, well, you want to drink it and have it prepared to have people over and drink it then. It's not going to get better, but you can prolong it a little bit, at maybe 2 or 3 days or something. Gotcha. By oxygenating it, or taking the oxygen out of it, or keeping it from getting in there. Yeah, you always want to drink with somebody. It's just much more fun. Each wine we've had so far, they're all uniquely different, and that's what they all should be. They should be all uniquely different. And then next year, this probably will be a little bit different because of the heat units, and how much sugar has been involved in the winemaking process.
Yeah, there was one wine I tasted. I'm gonna draw a blank on it now, but I really, really liked it. And then you came out with like a different year or whatever, and it seemed to be, it was a little bit sweeter. Okay,
that is it. You could do things. Somebody was asking me, another person the other day, that the alcohol wasn't as high. Well, that's because the fruit didn't get the dates. It didn't have enough heat units to get the sugars up. So you can do things to it, but we choose not to do that to get higher alcohol, because it's not about the alcohol. It's about the experience and sharing wines with your friends or relatives and talking, and it's about that and having a quality wine that goes really well. But that's some of the things that happen, and it's different every year, so that's good. That's what we want to experience. So then we know one year it was a good fruit growing year, and the next year it's different. We had more clouds or something like that. So those are unique things. That's what wine tasting is, why you go wine tasting, is find those differences in the winemaker's skills and abilities. And most winemakers will get better and better and better at winemaking, especially we have, and everything that way. So.
Okay.
Okay, the last wine that we're going to share this evening is we have a fruit wine. We often have time that people come to the winery and say, well, we don't drink fruit wines. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, that's all we make. Grapes are fruit too. So, but what they're really saying is they don't drink other than grape wines.
Gotcha.
And then once they taste ours, and if they don't drink Michigan wines, then they're really missing out, because we have producing excellent whites and excellent red wines in Michigan now. And this one is our strawberry rhubarb wine. And all of our berry wines like this, our fruit wines, they do not have any grape in them. So we don't start with a grape, we start with the actual fruit. So this is only strawberries and only rhubarb.
Okay.
And so this is really, all the flavors are reflected in this one as well. So we never make a wine and then artificially flavor it or color it or something like that. But this is a strawberry rhubarb wine.
It does have a pretty color to it.
Oh, it's just so beautiful,
it
amber.
is.
It's just lovely. And this one, you'll probably, I'll ask you, when you taste this and get it, I'm going to ask you, what are you feeling in your mouth and how you're dealing with this one? So you can explain it to me. I always instantly now close my eyes when I inhale my wines. I just do that because I get all the flavors right up at the beginning. You remember when I talked to you about legs? And that's little lines at separation of alcohol and sugars and our sweetness in the wines.
We had one that we tasted the other day that you could really see on the glass. I don't remember which one that was.
I don't remember either now. There's so many of them. But you did taste the strawberry in this one? It's coming off pretty good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am.
And at the end, the rhubarb sort of comes through in the end. It has a more little tartness to it. And that's the rhubarb coming through.
I do like that. So we have a lot more viewers on now than we did previously when you were talking about how you properly taste the wine.
Right.
So they were asking if we could kind of go over that again. And I think they're talking about the swirling, and we don't sniff wine, we inhale it. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, I don't sniff my wines. I inhale them because you want to get all the aroma in your nose, and you do it very, 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 very slowly, and it builds up, and you'll see if you close your eyes, you'll get a lot of notions of different things in the wine.
Yep. And then holding it in your mouth and kind of letting it aerate a little bit. Yep,
oxygenating it, letting it aerate is another way that you can get the wine, to get the different flavors in the wine and the aromas and stuff like that.
Now, did we have any other questions or?
From both of you, what's your favorite wine?
So they want to know what our favorite wine is. For me, it's the Chardonnays. I like dry white wines.
Right. My favorite wine is the one in my glass. Always the one in my glass. That's my favorite wine.
Yes.
Because I've learned to teach myself to enjoy what the wine has to offer me.
And I do know the other night when we were talking, especially as we're trying to help our customers choose a wine for them, we don't say that we like or dislike a wine. We prefer one over another. And everybody's taste buds are different. So something that I may prefer may not taste as well to somebody else. And so I always got to keep that in mind.
I definitely learned that when I was first tasting wine before ever. I kind of upset the wine guy, and I may have offended him. But it was like, I didn't like it. So I only like sweet wines. I like, I didn't like this, but oh my God, I didn't get any service. So you want to really prefer one wine or the other, not compare things like that.
Right.
So from somebody who doesn't drink wine, what is a good entry wine?
Okay. So from someone who does not usually drink wine, what would be a good one for them to start with?
Well, I would say that you would do probably a semi-sweet wine would be one that you would start to drink with, and that would be one. But then go to semi-sweet or semi-dry. You don't want to go to a dry wine because a dry wine will just kill you because you're not used to it. But over time, you will switch to go to a drier wine over time. And it's just what you enjoy, taste that, but always experience different wines. Always go tasting other wines to make sure that you can expand your palate. Because sometimes your taste buds and the time of day, who you're with, and what's going on affects what your taste, how you would prefer a wine.
And do you think like we talk about pairings, so maybe the meal that you're eating will sometimes too play a role in what you might prefer?
Oh, exactly. The pairing of a wine with a food. Like if you're eating you want to interact with the wine. You want to think about it when you're tasting and eating, like say a steak that has a little bit more marble to it, and you do a dry wine with that. It's amazing what the flavor, how it cleans it up with a dry red, and you can enjoy that steak much better. And the same thing, you just want to do it individually and how you interact with the wine. It's your choice how you want to be interacting with the wine and how you prefer one wine over another. I always have people tell me you're going to like this one, but maybe I don't. But just so you have to do it yourself and interact with it. But by learning to taste, like we were sharing, all those different flavors and expanding with that, you're going to see that you'll have something that you just keep growing and growing all the time with your wine tasting and food you pair with.
Now, I know for me, I don't care for rhubarb necessarily, and I've never even tasted the rhubarb strawberry, and I really like it. I mean,
It does have a different mouthfeel to
Yeah.
it. The strawberry comes out, but at the end it has that little bit of tart that might be from the rhubarb, which it is.
yeah.
Oh, what's the best wine to pair with dessert?
The best dessert wine.
The best wine to pair with a dessert, if you're having a dark chocolate, something like that, I would have our black raspberry tart cherry, but it's the black raspberry, the first one we ever made. Oh God, it's so good. If you have that dark chocolate, and I always like it with a triple dark chocolate gooey brownie. Oh my God, you melt that in your mouth and you drink the raspberry. And if you ever eat black raspberries in the woods, these are the black caps, they call them here in Michigan. But you eat those and you get that flavor, you just know it, and the aroma is it's just right on your nose, and you have it with the dark chocolate. It just melts when you blend it in your mouth. Oh, so good. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And we have red raspberry, which I do with cheesecake. You get a white sauce, I put a nice piece of cheesecake on it, red raspberries, drizzle dark chocolate over it, and pour it in a glass of cordial, freeze a red raspberry and put it in there and serve that to your guests. Oh, that's like a really nice deal.
That does sound good. Yeah.
So from both of you, where can they find these wines, both at Choice Market and Burgdorf? So where are you located and how can they find you?
So at Choice Farm Market, we're located at 4212 East Holt Road in Weberville, right on the corner of M52 and Weberville. And we do carry in stock 20 different wines from Burgdorf Winery. And you guys are located?
We're located at 5635 Schumann Road in Haslett, and that's where we're located. It's when you drive there, if you've never been to our place, you're going to show up we have a sign in the front yard, but we're in our 3-car garage. It's where our tasting room and gift shop's at, but we have a big production area in the back that we do it. And then you can go on our website and look where to buy, and that way you'll find Farm Country Market and every place else that may be having our wines
Okay.
throughout the state.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us this
yes.
evening, and thank Dave and Deb is also here, and just really appreciate you have such a wealth of knowledge. And I know the other night when we were there, we just learned so much, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring you in and share you with our audience here.
Thank you.
And yeah, so
Yeah, and anytime you want to come, and I'm sure come to here, you're going to be able to, they'll share with you the knowledge they have, and you want to find them as your expert in the wine locally here, because they're going to grow in their knowledge of it as we have done in ours. and just ask people, but you want to grow your own knowledge and work about how you enjoy the wines that you taste. And I encourage everybody to taste all wines. And when doing that, you're going to find some that are flawed, but you're going to find it's so much better to have one or two flawed ones than you're going to have some great ones, especially in Michigan wines. We have a lot of great, beautiful wines in Michigan that people just are not aware of, and we should be tasting them.
Yep.
All right, great.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.